Every detail of this operation was constructed in shadow. The perpetrator moved against a pre-dawn neighborhood utterly absent of witnesses, exploiting those quiet hours when streets hold nothing but stillness. A face covering concealed his identity. Latex or fabric sealed his hands against any fingerprint transfer. A backpack loaded with purpose-specific gear rode across his shoulders. A firearm, secured in a holster strapped directly to his torso, waited as a contingency measure should the situation turn resistant. Surveillance equipment at the target location was methodically severed. Monitoring infrastructure was neutralized with deliberate precision. This was a person who had constructed a mental map of risk exposure and addressed nearly every vulnerability his plan might produce. Nearly every one, because before all of that preparation unfolded, before the face covering and the gloves in the pre-dawn street, before arriving at an elderly woman's door with a weapon on his hip, this man went shopping. And the retail destination he selected may constitute the single most consequential operational error in this entire case. He chose Walmart. Not a collection of specialty retailers spread across separate commercial categories, which would have fragmented any purchase trail into harder-to-correlate threads. Not military surplus outlets where tactical equipment transactions generate less comprehensive documentation. Not anonymous encrypted marketplace platforms where no physical surveillance camera captures a buyer's face and no point-of-sale system records a timestamp. Not small independent shops operating with minimal camera infrastructure and casual record-keeping. Walmart, among the most comprehensively monitored, most meticulously documented, most data-intensive consumer retail environments operating anywhere on the planet. A corporate entity whose transaction architecture logs every single purchase at every register across every store with exact timestamps, itemized product codes broken down to the SKU level, and complete payment method information. A retail chain whose surveillance camera network blankets every entry point, every aisle corridor, every checkout lane, every parking lot across every location in its enormous footprint. Every item visible on that masked figure captured across 44 seconds of recovered surveillance footage connects back to a single retail source. The backpack he carried has been forensically identified as a black 25-liter Ozark Trail Hiker pack, a Walmart-exclusive private label product confirmed through FBI forensic analysis, a brand that exists nowhere else in the legitimate retail marketplace. The ski mask covering his face is believed by investigators to have been sourced from Walmart, based on statements Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos provided to CBS News on the 16th of February 2026. The dark jacket and lighter-colored pants he wore are similarly believed to have been acquired at Walmart, according to that same reporting, though the sheriff acknowledged those garment types are not sold exclusively through that chain. The firearm holster strapped to his body, described as a $10 holster available at Walmart, was under focused investigative examination, according to what News Nation reported about the specific evidentiary attention paid to that item. One store, one transaction ecosystem, one camera network, one corporate database of purchase histories, loyalty program linkages, and point-of-sale timestamps connecting products to purchase events, to geographic locations to individuals. The person who relied on darkness and a face covering as his protective barrier went shopping first. And that shopping excursion may be the only crack in an otherwise carefully constructed operational shell. On the 16th of February 2026, exactly 16 days after Nancy Guthrie vanished from her home in the Catalina foothills, the Pima County Sheriff's Department confirmed two developments that permanently reoriented the investigative landscape. The Guthrie family had been entirely cleared of suspicion, every member including siblings and their spouses. And investigators had committed several days to reviewing surveillance footage at Walmart locations in the area, methodically tracing the gear worn by the masked figure who appeared at Nancy's door. The investigation was no longer oriented toward anyone who might have had proximity to this woman through family ties or personal relationships. It was locked onto a specific shopper, a specific man who moved through a retail store, placed items in a cart, waited in a checkout line, exchanged payment for equipment he would later deploy in the abduction of an 84-year-old woman from her own home. And somewhere inside the corporate data infrastructure of the world's largest retailer, that transaction is preserved. Commercial systems do not suffer from memory loss. Security camera archives do not fade. Point-of-sale records do not dissolve. The individual who believed nighttime cover and a face covering rendered him untraceable walked into Walmart first and handed investigators precisely the kind of documented paper trail that operational darkness was intended to prevent. Before the forensic machinery of that retail evidence trail is fully examined, before the analytical weight of what retail forensics actually produces in practice is broken down, before the significance of how transaction data and DNA evidence are converging toward a single identification is made clear, there is something foundational that must be established. Because before any evidence analysis, before any forensic dissection of how a Walmart shopping trip becomes the thread investigators pull to unravel a complete criminal operation, there is a woman whose life matters far beyond her function as a case file or an investigative subject. Nancy Ellen Long Guthrie was born the 27th of January 1942 in Fort Wright, Kentucky, according to public records and family documentation. She was 84 years old at the time of her disappearance in February 2026. She relocated to the Tucson area with her family in the early 1970s and remained rooted there for more than 5 decades, more than 50 years embedded in the same community, more than 50 years building relationships and identity in the Catalina Foothills neighborhood, where her neighbors recognized her by name, where she maintained an active connection to her church, where she was woven into the social fabric of a place in the way only decades of continuous presence can produce. 3 children grew up in Arizona under her care: Annie, Savannah, and Cameron. Those children became adults, built independent lives, and maintained bonds with their mother across the full arc of their changing adult circumstances. She watched them establish careers and families. She became a grandmother to grandchildren who know her as a presence of warmth and constancy. Her husband, Charles Guthrie, died at age 49 during a mining exploration expedition in Mexico in 1988, according to what public records and family documentation establish. From that point forward, Nancy navigated widowhood in her late 40s and continued raising her children and constructing a life alone. She accomplished that. She built that life through the full span of decades that followed, rooted in the Catalina foothills, until the night of the 31st of January 2026. Her daughter, Savannah Guthrie, co-anchor of NBC's Today program, and among the most widely recognized personalities in American morning broadcast journalism, posted a video on Sunday, February 15th, documented by CBS News and multiple other outlets, in which she stated that the family retained hope and retained belief that things could still be resolved. The exhaustion embedded in that statement was noted by journalists who reviewed it. 2 weeks of public appeals, 2 weeks of waiting, 2 weeks of watching an investigation accumulate significant evidence without producing an arrest. Sheriff Chris Nanos had described Nancy's cognitive condition repeatedly and consistently throughout the investigation with a specific phrase: sharp as a tack. No cognitive deterioration, no disorientation. A woman who registered and processed everything happening around her with full mental clarity. Someone aware of her circumstances, not confused by them, not manipulable through cognitive vulnerability. Physically, however, she faced real constraints, confirmed by law enforcement sources: limited mobility, a cardiac pacemaker regulating her heart function, daily prescription medications, managing serious cardiovascular conditions, including elevated blood pressure. Dispatcher audio published by Broadcastify indicated she could not cover 50 yards on foot without assistance. Those physical limitations mattered to understanding the mechanics of what occurred, but they did not compromise the sharpness of the mind processing it all. She lived independently, no pets. She maintained active involvement with St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church in Tucson, a congregation that has included her name in weekly prayers every Sunday since she disappeared, according to what Fox News Digital's reporting on the congregation documented. On the evening of Saturday, January 31st, Nancy attended dinner and a card game at the home of her daughter Annie and son-in-law Tommaso Cioni. Tommaso drove her home afterward, delivering her at approximately 9:45 to 9:50 in the evening. The garage door sealed behind her at precisely 9:50 p.m., documented with exact digital timestamp by Sheriff Nanos at his February 5th press conference. That was the last confirmed moment her family witnessed her in her normal life. That door closing in the security record represents the last ordinary timestamp before everything fractured. Less than 4 hours later, an individual wearing a face covering and gloves and carrying a Walmart backpack approached that same door. Nancy Guthrie disappeared. On the 16th of February 2026, Sheriff Chris Nanos issued an official statement representing the most definitive investigative announcement made since homicide detectives were assigned to this case from its opening day. Every member of the Guthrie family, including all siblings and their spouses, had been completely cleared as potential suspects. His language was deliberate and contained an emotional directness unusual for an active investigation law enforcement statement. To be clear, the Guthrie family, to include all siblings and spouses, has been cleared as possible suspects in this case, Nano stated. According to verbatim documentation by CBS News and multiple other news organizations, the family has been nothing but cooperative and gracious, and are victims in this case. He then went further in what constituted a remarkably unguarded public declaration from a sitting sheriff managing an open investigation. Not one single person in the family is a suspect, he told 13 News directly, according to their documentation. He added that public speculation targeting the family needed to stop immediately. People are hurting, he stated. They are victims. The clearance was definitive and official. The emotional forcefulness of that statement carries its own investigative signal. Law enforcement executives in active cases use measured, carefully hedged language as standard professional practice. When a sheriff speaks with that degree of emotional directness in a public setting, it reflects evidentiary conclusions reached with a level of confidence that eliminates any professional uncertainty about the family's status. That confidence does not emerge from general impressions. It emerges from specific evidence reviewed, specific alibis verified, specific forensic results examined. According to what Nanos told 13 News, the family had been effectively ruled out within the first few days following February 1st. That timeline carries operational significance. Within days of Nancy's disappearance, investigators had completed whatever evidentiary review family clearance required and moved their entire analytical focus outward. The 2 weeks that followed were spent entirely on external suspect profiles and resources that might otherwise have been allocated toward examining family alibis, financial records, or relational dynamics as potential motive vectors could be fully redirected toward the external suspect architecture that the physical evidence was already pointing toward. The investigation had also been systematically moving away from 2 previously scrutinized external individuals. ABC News reported that sources close to the investigation indicated investigators were deprioritizing Carlos, the delivery driver detained and released in Rio Rico on February 10th, and the individual whose residence was searched during a SWAT operation on February 13th, according to their February 15th reporting. The Pima County Sheriff's Department confirmed that the male detained during a February 13th traffic stop connected to the Orange Grove area operation was the person of investigative interest at that moment and was subsequently released. As documented in Fox News Digital's reporting of Nanos' statement, the cumulative effect of these developments was a substantial compression of the potential suspect universe. The family cleared. 2 external individuals deprioritized. The investigative focus converging toward a specific profile connected directly to physical evidence that pointed at a single retail environment. The Walmart connection in this case demands precise item-by-item analysis because the comprehensiveness of it, the totality of the suspect's apparent reliance on a single retail ecosystem for every visible piece of operational equipment, is what transforms it from coincidence into a forensically extraordinary and potentially case-resolving evidentiary cluster. The first and most definitively confirmed item is the backpack. The FBI formally announced on February 12th, following forensic analysis conducted by the Bureau's Video Forensic Analysis Unit using an osteometric board reconstruction performed at the actual crime scene location, that the suspect was carrying a black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack. Ozark Trail is Walmart's proprietary private label outdoor equipment brand. That product is distributed exclusively through Walmart's retail channels. It is not stocked in outdoor specialty chains like REI or Cabela's. It is not carried by sporting goods retailers like Dick's Sporting Goods or Academy Sports. It does not appear on Amazon or comparable online marketplaces except through Walmart's own direct-to-consumer online platform. One retailer, one transaction ecosystem, one purchase database that recorded every sale of that exact product at every store location. When forensic analysis establishes that a recovered item is a private label exclusive brand, the source universe for legitimate purchase collapses immediately to a single corporate entity. Investigators know with certainty that if this backpack was acquired through legitimate retail commerce, rather than theft or secondhand acquisition, it was acquired at Walmart. The FBI's Video Forensic Analysis Unit did not perform a cursory visual match. Analysts employed an osteometric board at the actual scene to establish precise dimensional measurements. They reviewed surveillance footage frame by frame, comparing visual characteristics of the backpack against product databases until they arrived at a confirmed model and capacity, the 25-liter Ozark Trail Hiker Pack in black. That model carries a specific SKU within Walmart's inventory management system. Every transaction involving that specific SKU at every Walmart location across Arizona and the surrounding region generates a searchable record, including date, time, store location, register lane, items purchased, and payment method. Credit or debit card payment links the transaction directly to cardholder identity. Cash payment bypasses that direct identification link, but still creates a timestamp and location record, and more importantly, still deposits the buyer's physical presence across multiple camera angles inside the store and in the parking lot surveillance system, potentially capturing vehicle information and license plates during the same time window. The second item is the ski mask. Sheriff Nanos told CBS News on February 16th that investigators believe the face covering visible in the doorbell camera footage was purchased at Walmart. Generic black ski masks are available through numerous retail channels, which makes the sheriff's specific directional statement analytically meaningful. The precision of investigators' belief that this particular mask came from Walmart, rather than any of the many alternative sources, suggests forensic work has identified visual characteristics in the footage consistent with a specific product available through Walmart's channels in the Tucson area. That focused conclusion, combined with the exclusive brand confirmation on the backpack, creates an evidentiary overlap that is highly significant. Someone who purchased a Walmart-exclusive backpack and a Walmart-specific face covering during the same transaction, or across overlapping visits to the same store location during the same general time frame, generates a purchase event profile that becomes acutely identifiable within the transaction database. Investigators had devoted several days to reviewing surveillance footage at local Walmart stores, specifically, according to what CBS News reported of Nanos' statement, which reflects operational investment that only makes sense if specific product matching work has already given them a credible reason to believe those stores hold relevant footage. The third item is the clothing. The dark jacket and lighter colored trousers visible in the surveillance footage are believed to have been sourced from Walmart, per what Nanos communicated to CBS News, though he acknowledged these garment types are not exclusive to that chain. That honest investigative qualification matters procedurally. Dark jackets and light pants are available at countless retailers, but investigators spending multiple days specifically examining Walmart footage indicates that other evidence convergence has produced a working theory about where this clothing was acquired. The sheriff clarified to the Associated Press on February 16th that the Ozark Trail backpack remains the only item definitively confirmed at that stage of the investigation, while clothing sourcing remained under active examination. Definitively confirmed means forensically established beyond investigative dispute. Active investigation means supported by working evidence, but not yet reaching that threshold of forensic certainty. The fourth item is the gun holster, which has attracted considerably less public attention than the backpack, but carries significant behavioral intelligence on its own terms. A firearm holster was visible in the doorbell camera footage, strapped to the suspect's body. Investigators were closely examining this item, described as a $10 holster available at Walmart, according to what News Nation reported about the investigative focus on this specific piece of equipment. Consider what that price point and that retail source communicate about this individual's background and operational profile. This was not a retention holster sourced from a firearms specialty retailer engineered for secure weapon carry during dynamic physical movement. This was not a law enforcement duty holster built for reliable rapid draw under active duty pressure. This was not a concealment holster from a manufacturer whose entire product line addresses the performance variables that matter for serious carry applications. This was a $10 consumer option from a mainstream mass-market retailer. That choice is not consistent with someone who has received formal firearms training and understands what holster quality means for both performance and safety. It is not consistent with someone who carries firearms regularly as part of professional responsibility or habitual practice. It is consistent with someone who determined that a firearm was a necessary element of this specific operation, located the cheapest option that would physically hold the weapon against his body, and purchased it where everything else was already being purchased. Walmart carries holsters at that price point. The behavioral signature that choice produces reinforces every other equipment selection across the full profile. When all four items are analyzed together as a unified equipment profile, the picture they produce is operationally and behaviorally coherent in a specific way. This is not someone who distributed purchases across multiple specialty retailers to fragment the evidentiary trail. This is not someone who made deliberate sourcing decisions designed to avoid pattern creation across different retail categories. This is not someone who acquired items through theft, secondhand markets, or untraceable digital channels to specifically circumvent retail surveillance infrastructure. This is someone who acquired every visible piece of operational equipment through a single retail ecosystem, either in one transaction or across multiple visits to the same chain, selecting each item by accessibility and cost rather than by professional specification or operational quality. That is a distinct behavioral signature, and it is specific enough to focus the entire investigative retail review on Walmart's own extensive data architecture, which constitutes one of the most comprehensive commercial surveillance and transaction documentation systems in American retail. Modern Walmart stores maintain surveillance and transaction documentation infrastructure of a depth that most customers who shop there never fully consider. Point-of-sale systems record every transaction with exact timestamp, store location identifier, register lane number, and a complete itemized list of every product purchased with corresponding SKU codes. These records exist within corporate databases accessible to investigators operating under appropriate legal authority. They are not purged after short retention windows. Transaction histories are maintained systematically over substantial time periods. Loyalty program data, encompassing Walmart Plus memberships and the Walmart mobile application, links purchase histories directly to specific customer accounts that carry associated addresses, email contacts, phone numbers, and complete transaction histories spanning multiple store visits across multiple geographic locations. Any individual who has ever used the Walmart application to check in-store pricing, locate products in specific aisles, or access digital receipts has generated a data profile that connects their identity to their purchasing patterns across every transaction. Security cameras cover every zone of every store interior, every register lane, every entry and exit point. Parking lot surveillance captures every vehicle occupying that space during the same time window as any interior purchase transaction. Even a cash buyer who avoids generating a credit card trail still appears across multiple internal camera angles during their store visit, still populates parking lot footage potentially with readable vehicle and license plate information, and still generates a point-of-sale timestamp and location record that places them in a specific store at a specific moment regardless of payment method. The receipt is secondary evidence. The buyer's physical presence inside the store during a documentable time frame is primary evidence that persists in the security archive, independent of how the transaction was paid. Investigators working the Walmart surveillance review have specific, quantifiable parameters that transform what might otherwise be an overwhelming archival task into a systematic and manageable process. The Ozark Trail Hiker Pack in 25-liter capacity in black carries a specific SKU that generates a searchable transaction record at every Arizona and surrounding state Walmart location. The relevant time frame, the weeks and months preceding February 1st, narrows the transaction pool immediately. Each additional evidence stream layered onto that foundation, cell location data placing the suspect near particular Walmart stores during relevant windows, vehicle information extracted from parking lot surveillance, correlation with other simultaneously purchased items, reduces the candidate pool from a broad field of backpack purchasers down to a narrow set of high-probability individuals. Retired FBI Assistant Special Agent Daniel Ramos from the Bureau's El Paso field office addressed the retail tracking dimension of this investigation in an interview with Fox 10 Phoenix. According to their reporting, his professional assessment of how this category of evidence functions in active investigations underscored the binary, decisive nature of what retail records provide. Someone either appears in Walmart's purchase database for these specific items during the relevant time frame or they do not. That is not ambiguous circumstantial evidence requiring interpretive argument. It is yes or no evidence that shrinks the suspect pool through systematic elimination rather than expanding it through speculation. The mask's potential Walmart origin carries forensic significance that may actually exceed what its surface-level ambiguity suggests. Generic black ski masks exist at many retailers, but investigators spent several focused days reviewing footage at local Walmart stores specifically, and that targeted investment of investigative time and personnel only makes sense if forensic product matching work has produced a credible directional conclusion. If visual characteristics in the doorbell footage can be matched to a specific Walmart product in a way that excludes comparable products sold by other retailers, then the overlap of that product identification with the exclusive backpack brand creates a purchase event that becomes extraordinarily specific. The statistical probability that two unrelated individuals purchased a Walmart-exclusive private label backpack and a Walmart-specific face covering during overlapping timeframes at the same Tucson area store location prior to February 1st approaches statistical impossibility. Each additional item added to that overlap, the holster, the clothing, drives that probability further toward a point where coincidence is no longer a credible alternative explanation. This is the mechanism by which retail forensics narrows a suspect field, not by constructing theories about who committed a crime, but by systematically eliminating everyone who did not execute the specific sequence of purchases in the specific item combinations during the specific time frame at the specific locations that the physical evidence demands. The Walmart evidence trail and the DNA evidence recovered from the glove found near the departure route are not parallel investigative streams operating in separate lanes. They are converging pathways aimed at the same individual that will eventually intersect at a specific name. On February 15th, the FBI confirmed that a glove recovered approximately 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's residence, retrieved from a field near roadside brush, appeared visually consistent with the gloves worn by the suspect in the doorbell camera footage, according to the Bureau's official statement as reported by Newsweek. DNA extracted from the interior surface of that glove produced a profile consistent with an unknown male contributor. Preliminary analytical results reached the FBI on February 14th. The profile was submitted to CODIS, the Bureau's combined DNA index system containing over 26 million reference profiles, pending confirmation through final quality control procedures. CNN Chief Law Enforcement and Intelligence Analyst John Miller identified the specific analytical question investigators were working to resolve. The DNA extracted from the glove needed to be compared against biological material collected from the interior of Nancy's residence. The Pima County Sheriff's Department had separately confirmed, through an official statement on February 13th, that DNA material distinct from Nancy and those in regular close contact with her had been recovered from the property itself. If the glove's interior DNA profile matches the biological material recovered from inside the residence, investigators established that the same individual who wore the glove during the operation was physically present inside that home. That match constitutes what forensic analysis recognizes as a corroborating connection across two independent sampling locations. One sample from the crime scene property itself, one sample from 2 miles along the apparent departure route, same biological profile at both locations. That combination transforms a single DNA result into a pattern establishing continuity, proving that the glove was not coincidentally discarded by an unrelated person, but was actually worn and then abandoned by whoever entered Nancy Guthrie's home. The dual-track nature of the Walmart evidence and the DNA evidence creates a two-source verification architecture aimed at the same conclusion from different evidential directions. If CODIS returns a match from prior criminal history, investigators immediately cross-reference that identified individual against Walmart's transaction databases for the specific items documented in the footage during the relevant pre-February 1 state timeframe. A CODIS hit provides name, date of birth, prior arrest history, geographic patterns, and last known address information, all of which can be checked against Walmart loyalty program records and transaction archives. If Walmart Forensics surfaces a specific purchaser through transaction records or internal surveillance footage review, investigators compare that individual's biological profile against the unknown male DNA recovered from the glove. Either track arriving at a specific person allows the other track to independently confirm it. Dual-track forensic convergence toward the same identity from separate evidentiary directions is precisely the standard upon which solid criminal prosecutions are constructed. The $10 gun holster deserves extended analytical attention that public coverage of this case has largely denied it, because what that specific equipment choice communicates about the suspect's behavioral and experiential profile is analytically consequential beyond its retail tracing value. A person who brings a firearm to an operation involving an 84-year-old woman with significant physical mobility limitations has made a deliberate decision about anticipated force requirements. Carrying a weapon to this specific scene communicates something about how the suspect projected the situation developing inside the residence. It communicates a calculation about potential resistance, a contingency plan involving the threat or use of lethal force to manage whatever circumstances arose. The holster selection then layers additional behavioral data on top of that firearm decision. Not a quality retention holster designed for secure weapon carriage during physical exertion and movement. Not a law enforcement-grade duty holster built for reliable rapid access under operational pressure. Not a purpose-engineered concealment holster from a manufacturer whose entire product catalog addresses the performance variables that serious carriers understand. A $10 baseline holster from a mass-market consumer retail environment. This is not the equipment selection of an individual with formal firearms instruction who has absorbed training about holster quality and retention characteristics. This is not the selection pattern of someone with professional operational background who has experienced firsthand what equipment failure under stress means. This is not the behavioral signature of a regular carrier who has developed equipment preferences through habitual practice. This is the selection pattern of someone who needed a weapon on their body for this specific operation, identified the lowest cost option that would fulfill the basic mechanical function of keeping that weapon accessible, and purchased it from the same store where everything else in their operational kit was already being sourced. Every single piece of equipment in this suspect's profile reflects the same underlying logic. Civilian accessibility prioritized over professional specification, lowest viable cost in each category, most readily available retail source for each item. Someone who equipped themselves from what was convenient and affordable at the same retail location, where they might otherwise purchase household supplies or grocery items. This behavioral consistency is investigatively productive beyond the retail tracing it enables, because it narrows the suspect profile away from entire categories of individuals who would have made demonstrably different equipment selections based on their backgrounds. Military veterans familiar with actual tactical holster systems through training or active deployment would not select a $10 consumer product for an operation where equipment reliability has direct operational consequences. Current or former law enforcement professionals who understand quality retention holsters through years of duty carry would not select the cheapest available option for a scenario where weapon access might become critical. Career criminal operators who invest in quality equipment because their operational success depends on reliable gear would not outfit an entire operation from Walmart's consumer inventory. The $10 holster communicates civilian, cost-conscious, inexperienced with quality differences, not trained, not professional, not operationally experienced enough to recognize what the gap between a $10 consumer holster and a purpose-built retention system means in practice. And that $10 holster, identical to every other item in the suspect's equipment profile, creates a transaction record, a security camera angle, a purchase event at a specific register, at a specific Walmart location, at a specific moment that still exists in the corporate data system. Investigators are actively searching for that moment. Between 40,000 and 50,000 tips had been received by investigators in this case. As of the 16th of February, 2026, according to what Pima County Sheriff Nanos communicated to NBC affiliate KVOA, documented across multiple outlet reporting, earlier the same day he had referenced over 30,000 tips routed to both his office and the FBI. The volume was accelerating hourly. That scale of public response reflects a convergence of specific factors. Savannah's national broadcast platform generating awareness across an audience measured in millions, the visceral emotional resonance of an elderly woman taken from her own home, generating sustained public engagement, and the strategic specificity the FBI employed when releasing surveillance footage to the public. Rather than distributing generic images and waiting for generic tip responses, the Bureau released actionable, specific, recognizable detail, a specific backpack brand and model, a specific height range established through forensic reconstruction, A specific build description. Specific, identifiable equipment items visible in the footage. Specificity creates different cognitive response pathways in the public than general awareness does. A person who encounters a news alert about a missing woman retains general concern, but may not trigger specific actionable memory. A person who encounters the name and model of a specific product they have personally seen in someone's possession, in a context that now connects to a criminal operation, contacts law enforcement with targeted information, linking a both specific person to a specific product to a specific time frame. The Ozark Trail backpack represents the clearest activation of that recognition pathway. Millions of viewers encountered the surveillance footage after its release. Within that population, some subset had personally observed that exact backpack before, not in a retail setting while shopping, but in the direct possession of a specific individual in their personal or professional orbit at a specific time and in circumstances that, when combined with the footage, created an identification connection that had not previously existed. That activation mechanism explains why tip volume in the 24 hours immediately following the footage release reached approximately 4,000 calls according to Sheriff's Office documentation. The footage generated specific recognition opportunities that no general missing person broadcast could produce. The February 16th release of expanded Walmart connection information, specifically identifying the face covering and other items as believed to have been sourced from Walmart in addition to the definitively confirmed exclusive backpack, created another activation layer. Any individual who witnessed someone purchasing a ski mask, a black backpack, and a gun holster together at a local Walmart in the weeks prior to February 1st, now possess contextual information that transformed that memory from an unremarkable retail observation into a potentially critical investigative lead. Investigators were actively cross-referencing incoming tip data against the emerging retail evidence picture. A tip naming a specific individual could be immediately checked against Walmart's purchase records for the relevant items during the relevant time frame. A purchase record surfacing a specific buyer could be checked against tip submissions referencing that person's name or description. The intersection of public information channels and forensic retail documentation creates verification pathways that neither evidence stream alone could generate. This is how investigations receiving massive tip volumes transform informational noise into systematically productive intelligence. Through a physical evidence framework that allows incoming tips to be rapidly sorted by relevance. Tips that align with what the retail records are showing receive immediate elevated processing priority. The Walmart evidence architecture provides the specific filtering framework that elevates the right tips from the surrounding noise. 16 days into this investigation, the totality of what investigators had assembled was substantially more developed than public perception reflected. The suspect's sex had been forensically established as male through the DNA profile extracted from the glove interior, confirmed through the FBI's official statement. His approximate height had been determined through forensic reconstruction at the actual scene using the osteometric board placed at 5 feet 9 to 5 feet 10, a methodology characterized by former FBI Executive Assistant Director Joshua Schul as extremely accurate technology, according to CNN's reporting. His approximate physical build was characterized as average in the FBI's official descriptive release. His footwear type was documented as sneakers in the Bureau's clothing description. His carrying of a firearm in a holster was documented through footage analysis. The specific backpack model had been confirmed to the SKU level through forensic work. The general retail source of his equipment, Walmart for multiple confirmed and believed items, had been established. The gloves he wore appeared to match a specific recovered glove located 2 miles from the property along the departure route. That glove's interior carried an unknown male DNA profile either already entered into CODIS or imminently to be entered. DNA material distinct from Nancy and her close circle had been collected from inside the residence itself. The precise operational timing was documented to the minute. Camera disconnection at 1:47 a.m., presence detected at 2:12 a.m., pacemaker disconnection at 2:28 a.m., movement extended to at least 4 miles from the home at 10:52 a.m., based on a second surveillance video. The departure route passed through the field where the glove was recovered 2 miles out. The Guthrie family was completely cleared. 2 previously examined external individuals had been investigatively deprioritized. The focus had narrowed sharply toward a specific external male profile directly connected to the physical and forensic evidence in hand. That is not a characterization of an investigation lacking direction. That is a characterization of an investigation that has systematically reduced a large potential suspect universe through active elimination and is now driving multiple converging evidence streams toward a specific individual. Sheriff Nanos told several outlets on February 16th that the investigation was making genuine progress, documented by Fox News Digital and others. He characterized the underlying event as a kidnapping rather than a burglary that escalated, maintaining his consistent professional assessment of the fundamental nature of what occurred, documented by the Daily Mail. Meanwhile, a signal detection device mounted on a Pima County Sheriff's helicopter continued conducting slow, low-altitude systematic grid searches over the Tucson area, scanning for any detectable transmission from Nancy's cardiac pacemaker, attempting to pinpoint her location from above terrain that ground teams could not efficiently cover. As confirmed by CBS News and News Nation, Nancy Ellen Long Guthrie had been absent from her life for 16 days as of February 16th. Born the 27th of January, 1942, raised 3 children in Arizona, grandmother to grandchildren who cherish her. Active in her congregation at St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church in Tucson, where her name has been carried in communal prayer every Sunday since she vanished. Delivered home at her garage door at 9:50 in the evening on January 31st, after an ordinary card game with family. Never seen again under her own agency. Someone who had constructed a premeditated operation with deliberate attention to timing, equipment, camera infrastructure, concealment, and operational security, outfitted himself entirely at Walmart, and then crossed her threshold in the dark before dawn. He carried a weapon. He carried a backpack. He sealed his hands inside gloves to prevent biological transfer. He purchased all of it at Walmart, and Walmart's systems preserved the record of it. The DNA he left inside the glove he discarded 2 miles from her door was being processed against more than 26 million reference profiles in a national database. The transaction records for the Ozark Trail backpack, the ski mask, the holster, and the clothing were in Walmart's systems being combed by investigators who had already committed several days to examining local store surveillance archives. The thousands of tips arriving hourly were being cross-matched against both forensic evidence streams simultaneously. A pacemaker signal detection device was sweeping Tucson from the air. Savannah Guthrie stated publicly that it is never too late to do the right thing, that hope remained, that belief remained. 16 days of that hope and belief sustained against the backdrop of an investigation following every thread the evidence produces. All of those threads lead to the same convergence point: the retail trail, the biological profile, the transaction database. One specific individual who persuaded himself that pre-dawn timing and a face covering and a pair of gloves rendered him effectively invisible made a single foundational miscalculation before any of that concealment infrastructure mattered. He assembled a shopping list, and he purchased every item on it at the most comprehensively documented, most thoroughly surveilled, most data-intensive retail environment in contemporary American commerce. That list still exists in the system. That purchase event still sits in the database. That moment of physical presence in the store still occupies a position in Walmart's security camera archive, and investigators have been systematically finding it. Anyone possessing information about the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie is urged to contact the FBI immediately at 1-800-CALL-FBI, which is 1-800-225-5324. Tips can be submitted digitally at tips.fbi.gov. The Pima County Sheriff's Department tip line is 520-351-4900. A reward of $100,000 is available. All analysis presented here is grounded exclusively in official law enforcement statements and verified reporting from CBS News, ABC News, NBC News, CNN, Fox News Digital, News Nation, and the Pima County Sheriff's Department. No individuals have been charged in connection with this case. The investigation remains fully active. 16 days, 1 retail transaction, 1 DNA profile, 1 national database, and investigators working all 3 simultaneously, closing the distance between the evidence and the person it describes.